And as I was saying before we started, I'm like the worst, a middle-aged white guy is the worst person to host this. So I'm going to try to mostly just be quiet and just listen and learn. And so we'll just sort of, I thought we'd start by having my 5 Urban Institute colleagues introduce themselves. And then I'll put out a pretty general question and we'll start there. And right now there's only about 20 of us. So you should feel free to unmute yourselves if you have a question or a comment, preferably constructive, nice, respectful comment. Just put that out there where, you know, I worry less about that when we're talking about data visualization, like using D3, but let's all be nice. So I'll just go around my little view here, and we can just start that way for everyone to introduce themselves. So I think Jamila, you're in my top left quadrant. So why don't you start?
Hey everybody, I'm Jamia Patterson. I am the tech communication specialist for the tech and data team at Urban. And basically I oversee all communication initiatives for internal and external stakeholders. And I'm super happy to be here today. This is awesome.
And also, just so everybody knows, Jamila is in charge of the Data at Urban blog. So when you see all that awesome content, she runs everything. It keeps the rest of us like paying attention. So thanks, just as an aside. Okay, Kara. Oh, hold on, let me unmute you. Oh, there. This is our tech and data team, everybody.
So I'm Sarah Davis. I'm the Associate Director of Planning and Management in the Tech and Data Science office at Urban, and I am in the office of the CIO, doing a lot with operations and sort of general.
Great. Sybil?
Hi, I'm a lead programmer data scientist with the research programming team. And I basically support research projects with regards to data analysis and programming.
Great. Greta, you're next on my list.
I'm Greta Kauffman. I'm the director of the digital workplace in tech and data. Our focus is on supporting our users with their technology needs, hardware, software, meeting tools, the gamut.
Right. And last but not least, Khuloud.
Thank you. I'm Khuloud Odeh, the VP of Technology and Data Science at Urban and Chief Information Officer. I'm the lucky one who works with this wonderful group of powerful women at Urban.
Great. Well, thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day. As I said, I thought I would just put out a general sort of generic question, and then I'll just be quiet and just listen and learn. And so I thought we would ask sort of the big question is, what are the big challenges for women in technology, and maybe also women in technology in our nonprofit / policy sphere. I don't know if it differs in your experience from other industries. I'm sure it does. But I think that's maybe the most general question I can put out there. So maybe I'll start with Khuloud, and then again, I'll just, before I shut up, I'll just say to everyone else, if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to put them in the chat box, questions or comments or your own experiences. I'm sure, I know for myself, I'd be interested to hear and learn from everybody. So Khuloud, maybe we'll just start with you about, the biggest challenges that you've seen as a manager and as a woman in tech.
Thank you. I'll start with, I think the challenges are multifolded and also at different stages in pursuing a career in tech as a woman. I think it starts with pipeline, kind of encouraging more women to study technology or technology-related fields. So it starts there with that is definitely we need to convince more smart women and girls to pursue it. So there's that challenge of recruiting and attracting more women and girls to study technology. And the second will be in entering the workforce and pursuing opportunities and work. That has its own challenges. And then when we have women in tech, how you keep them in the tech field working in tech, as rewarding and exciting it is, also a challenging career for many reasons. It's a fast changing work environment and work demand. Even when you get into a tech job with certain skills, those skills are always evolving. So how you really keep pace with that and have flexibility to maintain your career and grow professionally is another challenge. So I would divide the challenges in these three, at least, categories: from pipeline, entering workforce, and then sustaining and staying and growing in the tech field.
So I could just call on people, but I think I'd rather just be quiet. I think those are great, all three of them. And I think we could probably talk about all. I don't know if anyone wants to pick up the mantle from that and start, but I'm happy to try to moderate, but I'm also happy just to let you go. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
So, I mean, I have just, I would say my career in tech definitely was led by women. So the first, first time I considered really taking classes in technology was because I knew another woman who'd done that ahead of me. And so I started pursuing those kind of same group of classes. And then the first job I got was from a classmate who was leaving her job in technology, and she recommended me for her position. And then every promotion that I got was from a boss that was female, frankly. So I was kind of stagnant when I had supervisors who are male, which it may not be that other people were getting promoted either. But definitely having women in technology as role models is a huge thing, I think, to getting more women in technology. That's it.
I was just going to jump in on the pipeline thing. I kind of found my way into tech after college. I had majored in sculpture and international relations, so it was not a career that anybody had ever suggested to me. And so along those same lines of like having models out there to encourage and promote is really important, but also just to keep in mind that we should always be putting that out there as a potential career, because it's a very cross-cutting one.
So I kind of agree with so the tech field is a very male-dominated field, and you have very few tech women leaders out there who can who can mentor, newbie programmers or newbie tech women to climb that ladder. And I feel like that is a huge challenge, because you have a lot of women who are now coming into the field, but they're not having help in terms of progressing through the career ladder.
So similar to a lot of their stories, I kind of happened upon tech as well. That wasn't my background. But I read previously, like I think only 3% of Black women comprise those women in the tech field. And so for me, I'm a woman, I'm Black, and then I'm also a single mother. So I always had this kind of internal battle of feeling like I was counted out, almost like an imposter-esque syndrome. And what I found really helpful is like finding unique networks that can sympathize and that you can kind of lean on and having that community. But yeah, that was that's like the number one challenge I feel like, is sometimes you kind of feel like you're counted out and your other counterparts are kind of held in esteem above you.
I was wondering if maybe we should focus on each of these three sort of verticals or topics that Khuloud started. So I'm curious about your thoughts on we start with the pipeline, because it's one that comes up in lots of different contexts with lots of different groups. And it's something that comes up in economics in the work that I do sort of generally on other things. But I'm curious about your thoughts on how to encourage, or I don't know if the right word is improve, but yeah, I guess improve that pipeline, especially as it relates to tech.
can maybe go a little bit deeper on the first one, which is how you really encourage more women and why we don't have necessarily that many girls pursuing not just tech, but STEM in general, which is, I think, what some of my colleagues alluded to is first, you cannot be what you cannot see, and not having enough role models, kind of people you could really see what could a career in tech mean for me as a woman or a girl, and also not sometimes capturing the time when high school senior decide on what they want to pursue and capturing their interest during that time when they are trying to make a decision on what they want to pursue. That I find is a very critical period of time, although there's theory and research shows that you should start even earlier stage for girls. But also some research shows that even girls that you encourage them to be good in math and science at younger age, if you don't capture their interest again when they become 14 and 15 and ready to make decision about college, you miss the chance of them pursuing that if you don't continue with that. So I find that period of time when they are making decision about what to study is actually, this is the time when you want to engage with them more and show them models of what would it look like if I'm going to be working in career. So some of the, for example, Girls Who Code have some emerging programs, they call them, where they bring kind of high school girls to work with female programmers or software engineers. And now with data scientists has been showing at least a good increase, almost by 15% of girls deciding to pursue a study of computer science or technology related field. The second challenge with also studying computer science is that when you study, it's a little bit, it could be abstract, it could be not clear how would a career or applied technology career looks like. When I studied computer science and programming, it was a very abstract and dry concept. We did not have much opportunity to see what would that mean in the world. And in a fast changing field, by the time you even finish your school, the market might demand something else and you have to quickly adapt and learn something new or a new language. I forget how many programming languages I had to learn when I entered the course that are different from what I studied in the university, which was a curriculum designed for that time. So finding also ways to make it visible what you could do with that abstract, dry type of technology that you're studying in the world, I think could make a whole difference in encouraging women and girls to pursue computer science. That just kind of go through the education part. It's going to give you the foundation, but the applicable life is way more fun and way more impactful. And especially in today's world, technology and software is almost in everything. So whatever somebody's interest is, a technology and coding and programming is, I look at it as a global passport to enter almost any field somebody is interested in. So I think the more we can create those connections early when girls are pursuing computer study or technology study and kind of show them an exciting future that they could be going towards, I think we could address that. But I find these two to be challenging, is capturing their attention at the right age when they're making decisions, and also trying to excite them about the applicability and the impact you could do with technology. Sometimes if that's not visible, that's another challenge.
I was going to jump in and say, even if you go past the formal education, providing those opportunities for people to find it, that was the kind of thing that was important to me. I think in my first job, it was in book publishing, and my boss sort of said, well, would you be willing to learn how to update the website? And I said, sure, it's my first job. So she gave me this big book that was Laura LeMay's, it was Teach Yourself HTML in 14 days, and plopped it down on the desk and said, here you go, put this speech on the website. So that was my intro. But it was it was an easy enough task to trust me with, and it kind of led to this whole career in web design, and beyond that.
So I completely agree that, girls at a very small age should be encouraged to learn how to code, because it's going to be a part of everybody's life in the future. But what's interesting is in India, you have a large number of women who take up the degree of computer science, and they get a degree, they do very well while studying it. But as soon as they get their degree, they drop off. They're not encouraged to get a career in computer science. They're just encouraged to learn, and that's it. There's no other support, pushing them forward in terms of, hey, these are the things that you can do with computer science. You can get a career, you can build things. So I feel like there needs to be constant support throughout the process till we get, a sizable number of women in the tech field, and then maybe we can ease off on everything.
So to Sybil, to your point, to the pipeline issue, I do wonder whether, when I think about the pipeline, I think getting people through college into graduate school into those positions, but I wonder if you should be thinking even further back. Like I think about, like, my daughter's 13, right? And I think about the teachers at her school, now middle school and elementary schools, like, I think she's primarily had men as her math till this year, and she of course loves her math teacher this year, who's a woman. But I wonder if the pipeline then extends all the way back to the teachers in elementary school who are, maybe the STEM teachers or the math teachers, predominantly men, and that's an issue in the pipeline itself.
So I mean, yes, that is an issue. You definitely need more women teachers because they know what's going on. Then they can encourage more girls. And like Khuloud said, you can't be what you can't see. So when you have these women who can encourage you, who you see are doing well, I mean, you get this idea of what can be like, what you can be capable of. So you definitely need women all the way. But I mean, it's kind of weird in terms of, in India, you have these parents who will send their kids, both boys and girls, to coding schools to learn how to code, to learn how to program, to do very well in school. But as soon as they graduate, I mean, you will see that a lot of women drop out of the workplace, especially in the tech field. And that is mainly because A, there is no support for them. B, it's a male dominated field. So, it's like what the man says goes. And so it's just like, I feel like at every step, I mean, it has to be more than just education. It has to go way beyond that as well.
Yeah. Actually, I agree with Sybil, and I think growing up in the Middle East, I faced a very similar challenge, and I think it's still the same, where at the School of Computer Science, actually female were 60% of the students. But when we all graduated, a much smaller percentage of us were able to get jobs in programming, coding, etc. In certain cases, we were denied jobs because they preferred to hire the male in banks because they thought, oh, they can stay late and do programming. Women are gonna get married and have kids and they will not be able to proceed. So they made almost assumptions and decisions on your behalf, regardless if you were genuinely interested in those positions. And also recently, unfortunately, this is still an issue, for example, in Jordan and Palestine and other places, and I think in India the same, where for women to pursue or to enter the workforce, some of them did not enter the workforce because of not the availability of safe, harassment-free transportation was an issue for them to be able to go to a work or company, especially if you're living in different areas. That was a barrier to enter the workforce for women in engineering or computer science. And I think a similar thing is also in India. So there are different factors that both in the application for jobs, and actually in today's world in the US, for example, if we have more companies depending on AI and kind of automated selection and screening, the ways women decide to apply for a job, we always have the saying, like, if a woman does not check all the boxes in a job description that she sees, she will not apply. And that's a big barrier. And there has been a lot of effort to even convince employer how you really even reformat the job postings to encourage more women to apply. So because I might check 5 of the boxes of what's required in a job and still apply and feels 100% qualified. So those techniques and challenges when you decide to apply for jobs, and how companies sort, let's say, the applications in the skills they're looking for, and also kind of that transition from, you studied, you had the degree, you had qualifications, and making this entry into the workforce. There's a number of challenges that go with it, based on, of course, the social economic context, the geographic location. I think internationally is different. And as I said, the third will be, once you got them in the workforce, how you really sustain them. Because as we had people drop from studying computer science, you had a number of people, of women entering the field, but not surviving it, or they cannot just simply make it. Some, they decide just to switch career because it's too hard. Others, they actually, we started seeing more women turn to entrepreneurship because of more flexibility, because the work environment is not flexible enough for them to balance and continue to grow, etc.
Can I ask, I think Jamila and Kara, since you didn't come to your current jobs in tech and data through sort of your traditional computer science education pathway, like, clearly something attracted you to the field outside of just going through, like, doing it in college. So I'm just curious, what were those pieces that were attractive about where you are now?
So being completely honest, I feel like I was shooting for the stars when applying for the current position I'm in. I was like, hey, I know HTML and I'm good with content management systems. That's techie enough, right? So, but I'm really appreciative of the opportunity, because I did come into the field with not as much knowledge and not being like a wonk of sorts. But it was just pretty cool to like learn the different capabilities that the team possesses, and then being able to take those like super complex concepts and kind of translating them and communicating them in a way that the average Joe can. So that's really what attracted me to the tech field.
And I really liked coding when I got into it. So,
Yeah.
I think I mentioned I had majored in international relations, but also sculpture in college, and went to a liberal arts school. I didn't even have graphic design. Like I took a Photoshop class after college at Northern Virginia Community College. I think that was the first time I tried any online programs. This was a while ago. So I would start drawing things freehand and scanning them in, and then trying to trace them when I got into design. And it just turned out to be something I really enjoyed. But had I not been given that opportunity, I just wouldn't have found it. It was lucky, I guess.
Right.
So I actually didn't start with a
Oh,
computer degree either. I got a BS in psychology. And you know, the first time I held a mouse was also at Nova at Northern Virginia Community College, and it was like the most awkward thing to like figure out how to drag this thing around. I mean, it was like a completely bizarre world. And really probably my first exposure to web was when I was working in the libraries system in Arlington when Yahoo came out and what's this thing called email. So and I ended up getting into kind of more tech elements maybe because I was younger. A lot of the workforce were older women. Um, at the time, middle-aged older women. So that was probably an advantage. I actually ended up doing also some HTML updates of what they called their selected sites. So they would say, this is the specific area of the web page that you're going to update. And so I got some introduction to that. So also not a traditional path to tech, but just different people along the way encouraging me in that kind of direction.
right. Do we have another path we want to talk about, another topic we want to talk about? Khuloud, you had your 3 to start.
Yeah, I think just I want to add to the third one among the challenges in sustaining and keeping women or challenges. I think one thing we cannot ignore is the pay gap for women in tech compared to their men in tech. I think this continues to be a scary gap that exists, which I think contributes to women either dropping out of the field or not necessarily grow into in their career. So that's just one more thing of why we're not also able, like once you do all the hard work to bring women to the workforce, why also we're failing to keep them. So the pay gap and also the flexibility in work schedules and work environment. Although I think after COVID, I'm hoping that one of the things we'll get out of it is having way more flexibility for parents with kids and women in particular, to be able, like you could definitely work effectively remote in virtual environment and be very, very productive. So I think it's a proof that flexibility is needed and works, and it does not impact necessarily the productivity of a person just because they have to juggle different balances in their life.
Yeah.
But I don't know if anybody else wants to add on kind of what keep you staying in tech.
I feel flexibility is a huge thing, especially for women with kids. I think a lot of them struggle with trying to manage, a kid as well as a career. And with the tech field changing so often and so fast, it's just hard to keep up.
So I actually think it's very hard to get out of tech once you're in it. It sort of starts to like, I had gone back to grad school to study sustainability, and even moving my focus in that way, tech still found me because every project I ended up on needed a website or needed needed some of those skill sets. So it's been a career that sort of evolved with me, and there are things that I took from one job that have followed into the next, and maybe that's not for all types of tech careers, but it certainly was my experience on the sort of project management, planning, web design side. I was always able to learn something from the last job and pull it into the next one.
So can we, I had like a random thought which turned into something else, but I was wondering if we could talk maybe specifically about the role you all play in at Urban specifically, because you know, we used to call this group the IT group, and it's no longer the IT group. Like, it has this much broader mandate and responsibility, and I would guess that a lot of people on this call would be interested in that broader mandate. Like, I'm guessing that most organizations that people who are on this call probably don't have someone like Jamila who's doing communication in their technology group. Like, that's just my guess. And you know, so I would guess that when most people think about their IT group, they think about someone coming to, like, you know, fix the mouse and reboot your computer. But that, like, you all do way more than that. So I know this is getting maybe a little bit off, like, the challenge of women in tech, but it's also like you have all helped build this entirely different type of department at Urban. So I don't know what the question is there, to be honest, but just to sort of talk about, like, this totally different approach. I mean, maybe Khuloud, since you lead the team, maybe you're best suited to sort of start. But then just, like, all of your roles are, like, I would guess pretty different, at least different than all the tech groups that all the organizations I've worked at. Like, it's way different.
So I will just share maybe the framing, but I want to open it up for my colleagues to chime in, because they all have been part of this transformative journey we had at Urban. I think with technology being kind of, I would say, a necessity, is not like an optional thing. Businesses, companies, sectors, they're all relying on technology to grow and innovate. And policy research organizations and nonprofit are no exception. I think we're kind of lag behind a little bit to follow the trend that has been in the for-profit sector. But there is value in technology when you apply it in a way to drive, in the companies, in the for-profit sector, it's to drive revenue, to develop new digital services and products, etc. There are total business models built on digital in today's world, not just digitizing some of your services. And that's, I would say, is the same thing in the nonprofit and policy research organizations. But actually for us who've been working more in the nonprofit sector, technology, it's even more exciting and more kind of brings a more kind of a meaningful way to really bring innovation of technology, because you're not just driving the bottom line, you're actually driving a mission, you're driving impact. So it makes it exciting to think how your technology, from the standard operational technology to kind of innovative technology in the core area of your impact. And in our areas, it's the policy research and what technology and data could contribute to that. So I think the shift and thinking of technology as a strategic contributor and driver for more impact of a nonprofit organization is a big driver. And that manifests, I would say, in multiple things, from the way we try to transform the way we operate and the way we create a great user experience, and love for Greta maybe to share that, to kind of ensuring that the business and the organization is operating and having the right information, the quality information to make business operational decisions. I think that is another core factor, how you really minimize risk, keep running. The organization have better insights about where you're going, your pipeline of funding, how the communication is being tracked, what's the statistics on the website, the readership, etc. To, of course, the most exciting part of research programming and data science and the new methods. What could it mean for advancing our policy research and analysis, and give us the opportunity to provide rapid response, find new sources of data that could complement the standard data sets we have, etc. So all of these, I look at them as one thing, and they all mutually impacting each other. And I could not think of something more than COVID as a real test for that vision we had, where being able to switch quickly to be able to work remotely and have all the tools you need, whether you are a researcher or a finance or even a tech support, to have everything you need to continue to do your work and contribute, up to what are the innovative ways of technology and data that we could do, for example, to bring quick insights. So I think that has been the main part, is we started shifting and thinking of technology as a core strategic contributor and not just as a support function or operational side. It's a core contributor to really impact urban.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else wants to talk more about their roles or the department in general.
Well, I mean, I'll talk a little more about, you know, what our approach is at Urban in terms of technology and supporting our staff. So when I joined, it was still very much a perception, I think, that tech was there to fix things that were broken. And under Khuloud's leadership, we really shifted to an approach where we were getting feedback from our staff, what we call the voice of the customer, on what the pain points are for them, what the challenges they have in doing their work. I mean, it could be a hardware challenge, but it could also be a kind of I have no way of analyzing the data that I have available to me in an effective way. So shifting to this approach of listening to the voice of our customer helped us focus what we were going to shift our attentions on. So for instance, when I started, we had about 9 conference rooms. And for somebody to have a meeting like this that we're having right now in one of those rooms, they had to make a request to the help desk in a very complicated system. They booked the space. It was very disjointed in the way that they would have to get things set up for their meeting room. And one of the blockers of getting the technology in the room was back-to-back meetings even. So you may have to spend 10 minutes in the beginning of your very important meeting just getting the technology set up because the space wasn't available ahead of time. So that really helped getting feedback from users on what they needed in technology spaces for our new building really helped us decide we have to have consistent technology in all of the meeting rooms with the baseline equipment so that people can go into a space knowing that from the moment they get in there, they can start their meeting. Not to say that there aren't issues, but we continually get feedback from staff. We look at problems in a very targeted way so that we can address issues kind of before they're bigger issues. But really the voice of the customer is priceless because you're not solving problems that you think are important. You're solving problems that are important to everybody.
I want to jump in and maybe ask Sybil to comment on this idea too. But at Urban particularly, there are so many researchers across the organization that have some data science background or technical skills. A couple of them are on the call. But we also have research programmers on Sybil's team and data scientists who are sort of developers at heart with a knack for public policy also. And so I think the shift from IT to technology and data science really helped put that in perspective. It made it more of a partnership on the research as well, more what Khuloud was saying. Sybil, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so the research programming team and the data science team, basically, we work with researchers, and I mean, we have a lot of products that we produce, and it could be right from data analysis and data cleaning, right to the micro simulation tools or the tax calculators that we create. And we do this in partnership with the researchers. So yeah, so we are, I mean, like Kara said, we are more into the data analysis and the data science part of the tech and data field.
And I want to make sure we go back to the communication aspect. It's true that we are among the few who has somebody like Jamila, who has, as a team, we started the Data at Urban blog to really shed some light on what's happening in the background. What are the cool things that are happening that is enabling the work, the visualization, the data tools. I think one aspect usually that is a challenge in technology is people sometimes look at technology as a black box, or it's like, they're not sure. It's a team that looks always busy. In some organization, they have the reputation of saying no, or they are the ones who complicate things, etc. And for us, it was important to focus on kind of opening that box and just showing really the multi-layers of what happens in the back scene. So for us, it started by opening that box and trying to bring people more towards the world of what a day-to-day look like for the technology team on different roles, not just of the research programmers that the rest of the organization interact most, but also everybody else. And the more we saw the value of opening that black box, the more we realized that communication and strategic communication is so crucial for us to really make the message resonate that technology is a strategic contributor. It's not just a support function. And Jamila has been the one who really bringing that to a great thing. But I definitely would love for Jamila to share a little bit how she saw that perspective changing about technology through the communication angle.
So it's funny, every time I tell folks that I do communications for a tech team, they just automatically assume, oh, you're a technical writer. And I'm like, no, that's not what I do. I like explaining to folks that how Khuloud positioned it before. We are strategic contributors, and we work hand in hand with these research projects. And it's like these cool and interesting stories that come from the background that are not often explained, not often understood. Folks are sometimes confused about, well, so are you just help desk? And so it's just really fun to let folks in and give them an eye into what is really going on in the background and those methods that we use, and explaining it in a way that doesn't necessarily confuse them. And like Khuloud had alluded to before, continues to push us forward as strategic contributors.
Yeah, and I will say, as someone
is doing great, by the way.
doing great. And I will say, as someone who has to read all those Data at Urban posts, some of them are just way over my head. So just
interesting.
So people who read that blog, just so you know, they're not always edited by everybody on the team, because the one on Drupal that just came out, for example, I was like, so I recognize that word Drupal, and that's about it. Yeah. Okay, I think I have. I think I have kind of a loaded question to wrap this up, and so I don't want to single people out or anyone else, but I'm curious if we could bring these two threads of this conversation together. So this sort of switch from a traditional IT department to a broader tech and data, which, as you've all mentioned, does much more than just like troubleshooting problems, and the challenges of being women in technology. Urban's a big organization, and so you're managing and responding to a lot of different demands. And so I'm just curious, in this evolution, and also as we and where we are now going forward, like, what are the challenges of being part of the, being part of the people who are changing urban from the inside, but also having the challenges of being women in technology. And so again, I don't have the very well thought out articulated question, but just trying to bring these two threads of conversation together.
So, I mean, I don't know if this exactly answers your question, but I think one of the things that has liberated me in work while working at Urban, and as I've learned how to do different things, is being data driven instead of emotionally driven. So, you look at the number of people, number of meetings in conference rooms, or you look at the age of the systems that people have and the number of tickets that they're having related to their computers, and use the data to help you along with your narrative and some of the stories that people have with issues or challenges or things that they're trying to do to help support the things that you're trying to drive forward. So I think one of the things that in the past that would really, I would get upset by an issue because I knew it was a big problem, but your emotions don't really drive people to doing things. So kind of removing yourself from the emotional of a situation, which it may be validly dire, but using data and to help you move your story forward and get buy-in to the issue has been really liberating and helpful. So that's kind of like women are seen as being emotional creatures, which I mean, it may be completely valid. I'm not going to, I think my husband may be more emotional than I am, but getting away from the emotions of the problem and digging into the problem itself, and having data behind your decisions and your stories is super helpful. And I think it really has released me from worrying about problems. Now I can dig into the numbers and look at it in different ways and really help focus what I want to drive forward.
Okay, so we are towards the end. I want to give, I just want to pause and see, no one's dropped any questions in the chat box, which is fine, but I did want to give people a chance if they have a question or comment about all the things that we've been talking about to weigh in. And so maybe not, it's a quiet group today. It's a Tuesday afternoon, I don't know. So I guess I'll just ask, okay, so Suzanna raised her hand, which is so cool that people know how to use the Zoom stuff. That's much better than it was a few weeks ago, that people now know how to use Zoom, which is great. Suzanna, oh, hi, there you are. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. And thank you for hosting this. This is great.
Oh, of course.
So yeah, I actually didn't realize that button was there until I sort of brought up all participants and then realized it was there. I was like, oh, good. Here's the way I can engage. So some of you have touched on this already, and it's sort of implied in a lot of what you've been saying. Let's recognize that the question is not only how do we get women in the field, which by implication implies there's a problem with women's initiative. Let's also recognize the inverse of that question is why aren't women in this field? And all of you have touched on in several ways this question of how are women being held back in this field? What are the challenges of women in this field? And it's not just the challenge of like you yourself, your personal limitations. It is also a challenge that is inherent in environment, as many of you have touched on. In terms of training, it's funny, you speak across your female colleagues and you quickly realize that there are stories where your friend in an economics PhD program last year was told point blank by her male professor that men don't work harder, that men work harder than women, and that men in economics PhD programs work harder than women, that male students are inherently better in 2019. I think that the burden of putting this on women as a problem of women's initiative is good and positive, in the sense that, yes, we need to think about what proactively we can do to support that, but we also need to address the underlying challenge of why aren't women in this field? Why aren't women being encouraged? What is actively discouraging women from joining this field? I mean, like, I'm sure all of you have stories of this happening, whether it's harassment or whether it's the questions or not getting the promotion or not the stuff that doesn't come up. I feel like I've been really lucky in the sense that my first two mentors were men. How many men are willing to mentor women? How many men are willing to mentor their female colleagues? If all of your superiors are men, in my field, many of my superiors are men. And so I think it's really important. Yeah, yes, you're seeking out women role models, and those are clearly extraordinarily valuable, and you have won the jackpot if you get one. But for those of us who don't win the jackpot, and those of us who have male mentors or need the mentorship of men, need the promotion and active encouragement of men in superior roles, I think it's just really important to address those questions as well as the more positive, proactive side of how can we encourage women in this role? How can we encourage men to not actively discourage women in this role? How can we encourage men to encourage their female colleagues and the women who work underneath them? Sorry, food for thought.
I want to jump in real quick, and that it's a very good point. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that we five are not all of the women on our team. We have a lot more women on our team within tech and data science at Urban. And I've had a lot of my career in nonprofits, and so I have kind of always been surrounded by teams with a fair number of women. I think that's a pretty normal thing in the nonprofit field. And so I just want to bring up that I think that has been a factor in my ability to get into tech and things like that. So I don't know the answer to your question and how you make it different when there aren't as many women there. But I do want to acknowledge that it's probably been easier for me, particularly having been in those environments.
I think Sybil wanted to say something.
Oh, I just wanted to say that, I mean, even I've been very lucky because I've had most of my career in the nonprofit field. And so I have not faced the stuff that you're talking about. But I have read a lot about this, and you're right, we should be focusing on this. But I think what also perplexes me is, all these columns always talk about how women should change, how women should brag, how women should do this, how women should change. Like, why are the men not changing? Like, why is it that, women have to constantly change so that we are accepted in the tech field? So, yeah.
I want just quickly to add to Sybil's point, especially when you said about mentorship and having a man mentor or a woman mentor. I think most importantly is to mentor women to be themselves and to lead and work with authenticity, kind of leverage really their strengths. We don't want to mentor women to be like the men, how they work in technology. I don't want the perception like that men work harder, whether an economist or something. I think women do work smarter, and they have to juggle. So I think we want to encourage and empower women to continue to be themselves and to bring their full self to the work and their approaches and their ideas. There are even ways to solve problems. It could be super enriching and strengthening to any team. There are multiple researches showing that teams that have women tend to be collectively smarter teams than teams that they don't have women on them. So the more we could encourage women to unlock the power of their skills and be in the field fully with their experiences and backgrounds and different approaches and mindset, I think that will matter more than who the mentor is or what the gender of the mentor.
Anna. That's a great question and addition. So we have one more question before we say goodbye. So Donna has a question. So anyway, go ahead, Donna.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So I'm with the American Public Human Services Association, and we are looking at creating a similar type group for our women in health and human services, IT area. And I was just wondering if the Urban Institute would be willing to share either your charter or some of your thinking as you were putting a women's group together. Because one of the things I think that we struggle with is we don't want it to be a group where women are just going to come together and it's not going to be productive. We want it to be a useful tool for our members, and not just another group to be belonging to another group. I don't know if that makes sense, but we're really looking for, pre-COVID, we were well on our way to gathering data and information from other groups. And then, COVID came, and like everyone else's life, came to a screeching halt. And so it's now, as we're starting to come out of this, we're starting to look at some of these things that we, put on the back burner and, figure out how we actualize them now. So we're just looking for how others are doing it. So if there's materials that you have that you would be willing to share, we'd be open to receiving them.
Khuloud, that's, I think,
Sure.
mostly for you.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. No, we have, and actually Sybil is also a very active member of, I think Sybil was the first one to bring Women Who Code to be hosted at Urban. And I think it opened our eyes to really why it's important for the women in tech and in policy and data at Urban to really be active in the community. I think women in the tech sector, they do need the community. So we do have an affinity group at Urban for women in tech, data and policy. And this has been a journey. It has been organically growing. But I think in the recent effort of Urban focus on diversity and equity and inclusion, the role of these affinity groups, and specifically the women affinity group at Urban, has been very enriching. It has been focusing on being a sounding board, sometimes being that kind of group that you really want to go to, sometimes to share and hear how people are balancing, how they're focusing on careers, but also it has started playing role in informing and shaping Urban's approach to diversity and inclusion when it comes to women. I think it's interesting how we see various challenges for women who work in policy and research and women economists versus women in the tech, and now the growing field of data science. So we're happy to share kind of our charter is simple and kind of share what we learned over the few years since we started the affinity group, and actually how the role of this affinity group is now changing through COVID.
Yeah, no, that I really appreciate it. I mean, it's it's just challenging times, and I'm always a fan of, if it's already been done and done successfully, like look to what those successes are and build on them, versus starting from a blank piece of paper and trying to build it, from scratch. 100%. So anything you could share would be great.
Sure, happy to do that.
Great. Well, I'll try to connect you two once I get the emails, and I'll link you up together. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Well, we're at 2:00, 2:03. I want to say thanks to all 5 of you, Jamila, Kara, Sybil, Greta, Khuloud. Thanks for coming on and chatting. It was really interesting. I learned a lot, and thanks a lot. And thanks to everybody else for tuning in to this week's chat. We won't do another one the rest of this week. I'm getting ready for next week. So next week we have 4 Data at Urban discussions set up. They'll all be geared for kids. So that will be fun. So look out for those. Yeah, and that's all for today. So everybody, thanks a lot. Stay healthy, stay safe, and yeah, we'll see you all soon. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thanks all. Appreciate it. Bye.